In the 1800s and the early 1900s, America was bombarded by a deadly virus known as the White Death, or tuberculosis. This disease was very terrifying and extremely contagious, and without a cure, it devastated entire families and communities. In 1900, Louisville was the perfect place for tuberculosis to breed and run rampant, being located on low swampland. In 1910, a hospital was built on a hill in southern Jefferson County and was designed to combat this deadly disease. However, the disease continued to ravage the region, and eventually they received enough donations and some land, and a new hospital was started in 1924. The new structure, called Waverly Hills, opened in 1926. It was the most advanced sanatorium for tuberculosis in the country, but most of the patients passed from the disease anyways. Lacking medicine and treatments, the patients were offered fresh air, rest, and plenty of nutritious food. Sadly, the hospital's main use was to isolate the sick from those that are not. Families were divided, with parents and children alike being forced into the hospital with little contact with loved ones. Often the treatments for tuberculosis were as bad, if not worse, than the disease itself. Some of the experiments that were done in seeking a cure would be considered barbaric by today's standards, but others are now common. Patients' lungs were exposed to UV light in an attempt to stop the spread of the bacteria. This was done in sunrooms where they used artificial light instead of sunlight, or on the roof or open porches. Since they believed fresh air was a possible cure, the patients were often put in front of huge windows or on the porches, even during the middle of winter. Old photos show patients lounging in chairs while covered in snow. Other treatments were less pleasant, but much bloodier. Doctors would surgically implant a balloon into the lungs and then fill them in an attempt to expand the lungs. This often had disastrous results, as well as an operation where muscles and ribs are removed from the patient's chest to expand further and allow more oxygen in. This bloody procedure was considered a last resort, and most patients didn't survive it. Patients that survived the disease and the treatments would leave out the front door. The ones that didn't were taken through what was called the body chute, or the death tunnel. It was an enclosed tunnel that led through the hospital to train tracks at the bottom of the hill. They used a motorized rail and cable system, and they would lower the bodies to waiting trains in secret. They kept it a secret so that the other patients wouldn't see how many were leaving dead. The doctors believed that the patient's mental health was just as important as their physical health. Many inaccurate reports are out there that state how many people died during Waverly Hill's decades of operations. Some state that tens of thousands died, but this is greatly exaggerated. A former assistant medical director at the hospital named Dr. J. Frank Stewart stated that the highest number of deaths to occur there in a single year was 152. Those numbers dropped as low as 42 in 1955. According to filed death certificates, approximately 6,000 people died there dating back to 1911. While a much smaller number than is bandied about, it's still a high number for a single structure. By the 1930s, tuberculosis started to decline all over the world, and by 1943 it was mostly eradicated in the United States due to new medicines. Shortly after World War II, there was a short spike in cases in soldiers returning home, and they were housed at Waverly Hills. Dr. Stewart stated in his autobiography that many soldiers had advanced cases and did not live for much longer than a week after arriving there. Waverly Hills was closed down in 1961, but reopened a year later as Woodhaven Geriatric Sanitarium. Many rumors and stories were told about patient abuse and mistreatment, including unusual experiments while it was an old age home. Some were proven false, but many were sadly true. They used electroshock therapy as a treatment for many different ailments. Many budget cuts in the 60s and 70s led to horrible conditions and mistreatments, and in 1982 the state closed it for good. Is there any wonder that Waverly Hills is considered to be one of the most haunted places in the country, considering all the death, pain, and agony? The buildings and land were auctioned off many times over the next couple of decades. A developer purchased the property in 1983 with a plan of turning it into a minimum security prison for Kentucky. Neighbors protested, so they changed the idea to turn the former hospital into apartments. This idea was abandoned due to lack of financing. Robert Alberhasky bought Waverly Hills and the surrounding land in March of 1996. He ran Christ the Redeemer Foundation. He planned to build the world's tallest Jesus statue there, along with an art and worship center. The statue, inspired by the one in Rio de Janeiro, was meant to be placed on the roof, was priced at $4 million. More of his plan was to convert the sanatorium into a chapel, gift shop, and theater, which would have ran another $8 million. However, donations only raised $3,000 towards the project, and it was canceled in November of 1997. Albert Haskey abandoned Waverly Hills and the grounds, and then tried to have the property condemned and the buildings torn down and redeveloped in order to recoup some of his costs. The county blocked this plan, and it was rumored that demolition was done at the southern edge in order to undermine the structural foundations to try to claim an insurance money. This also failed, and it was sold to Charlie and Tina Mattingly in 1991. They are the current owners. By 1991, the once grand building had been almost destroyed by time, the elements, and thrill-seeking vandals. It had become the local haunted house and attracted the homeless looking for shelter and teenagers breaking in looking for ghosts. It soon gained a reputation for being haunted, and stories made the rounds of spirits, like the little girl being seen running up and down the third-floor solarium, a little boy spotted with a leather ball, a hearse appearing at the back of the building bringing coffins, a woman with bleeding wrists crying for help, and more. Visitors spoke of slamming doors, lights in the windows with no power on, strange sounds, and eerie footsteps in empty rooms. Some stories are of a man in a white coat seen walking in the kitchen, and the smell of cooking food in the room. The kitchen had broken windows, fallen plaster, broken table and chairs, and debris and water from the roof leaking. The cafeteria was pretty much the same. People still claim hearing footsteps there, a door swinging shut on its own, and the smell of fresh baked bread. The biggest and most controversial legend is connected to the fifth floor. This floor had 2 nurses' stations, a pantry, a linen room, medicine room, and 2 medium-sized rooms on both sides of the nurses' stations. One of these rooms is room 502 and is subject to many rumors, and many that broke in over the years wanted to see it. According to stories, this is where many people have seen shapes moving in the window, have heard voices, and supposedly people have jumped to their deaths. A huge misconception of the hospital was that this floor housed mentally ill tuberculosis patients. It did not. They were not insane nor confined to their rooms. Just like on any floor, they were free to move around. Thanks to its design, patients still had access to fresh air and sunshine that was used to treat the illness. It was centered in the middle of the hospital, with the 2 wards extending from the nurses' stations. They were glassed in on all sides and opened into a patio-type roof. According to stories, a nurse was found dead in room 502 in 1928. She unalived herself by hanging from the light fixture. She was 29, unmarried, and pregnant. She suffered depression due to her situation, and it led to her taking her life. Nobody knows how long she hung there before being discovered. This would not be the only tragedy connected to room 502. Another nurse in 1932, she worked in the same room and jumped from the roof patio several stories to her death. Nobody knows why she did, but some believe she was pushed. There is no proof of this, but rumors persist. Those are the stories, but like many, no records are found that prove any of this. There are also conflicting reports of how the woman hung herself. Some say from the light fixture, others say from a pipe over the door, and more say from the rafters. There isn't any rafters. The pipe is part of a sprinkler system installed in 1972, and the light fixture is hung on a chain that wouldn't hold a person's weight. While there is no documentation of either death, some say that it was verified by John Thornberry, a former staff member who died in 2006. In his obituary, it stated he was born in 1922, and he would have been 6 and 10 years old during the alleged deaths of room 502. Because of this, his verification is extremely problematic. So what happened in room 502 that make many people claim paranormal experiences there? Was it people with overactive imaginations or something real? It's difficult to say, but something may have happened there to cause the legends to take root. No one knows what that could be though. The story of room 502 were possibly based on some facts long forgotten, but the truth is buried among speculation and rumor. Even with all this, strange things still get reported. For those interested in ghost stories and spooky legends, the tale of Tennessee's Bell Witch Cave is definitely one for the books. It traces back to the 1800s when a witch who haunted the Bell family was said to live in what is now the Bell Witch Cave. A farmer by the name of John Bell lived in Robertson County, Tennessee, with his wife and children in the 1800s. They lived on a farm for 13 years, during which John became a deacon at the Red River Baptist Church. In the summer of 1817, the family began experiencing paranormal-like activity. Some family members saw strange animals roaming the property. Others heard knocking sounds on the doors and walls late at night. There were also sounds of chains being dragged through the house and choking sounds. The Bells were able to withstand the frightening occurrences for about a year, but then things became unbearable. John told his neighbor, James Johnson, about the terrors that were lurking in his home, and after experiencing a few strange things himself, Johnson suggested doing an investigation. Over time, the unidentified presence in the Bells' home developed a voice. It would provide different identities when asked who it was, once saying it was the witch of a neighbor named Kate Batts. After that, the force became called Kate, the Bells' Witch. Over the next several years, Kate tormented the Bell family. John and his daughter Betsy experienced the most abuse, which appeared to be due to Kate trying to fulfill two things: to kill John Bell and to stop Betsy from marrying a certain boy named Joshua Gardner. Betsy was pinched, scratched, had her hair pulled, and was stuck with pins. John suffered from spells of throat swelling and had the feeling of a stick being stuck sideways in his throat. He grew weaker and weaker. It was on December 20th, 1820, that John Bell died. The theory surrounding his death is that he was poisoned by Kate, who took credit for his death. In 1821, Betsy broke off her engagement with Joshua Gardner. Once these two events happened, Kate said goodbye and promised she'd return in 7 years. She did come back for a short time, saying her next visit would be in 107 years. However, some believe she never left because strange things continue to happen in and around the Bell Witch Cave for many years. By most accounts, the story of Kate and the Bell family is morbid and horrifying. But according to legend, Kate actually once saved a young child who became stuck in the Bell Witch Cave while playing with a group of friends. During the children's exploration of the dark cavern, a boy got stuck in a hole and called out for help. A voice, allegedly that of Kate, shouted, "I'll get him out," and used her invisible hands to pull the boy out of the hole. She then gave the children a brief lesson on safety and disappeared. This event happened during the time she was harassing the Bell family, so it's unclear why she chose to act as a heroine that day. The Bell Witch Cave, which was on the farmland owned by John Bell during the years of Kate's torment, was listed on the National Historic Registry in 2008. Tours of the property are available by appointment from 10 a.m. until 5 p.m., but no children under the age of 2 are allowed in the cave. People with fears of ghosts and other spirits should probably also not visit the cave or the property surrounding it. The Gettysburg Battlefield, situated in Pennsylvania, holds an indelible place in the annals of American history. This hallowed ground witnessed one of the most pivotal battles of the American Civil War, the Battle of Gettysburg, fought from July 1st to July 3rd, 1863. The Battle of Gettysburg marked a turning point in the American Civil War, with Union forces under General George G. Meade successfully repelling the Confederate Army led by General Robert E. Lee. The 3-day battle resulted in staggering casualties, with over 50,000 soldiers losing their lives, wounded, or missing. The Gettysburg Address delivered by President Abraham Lincoln at the dedication of Soldiers' National Cemetery further cemented the site's significance as a symbol of sacrifice and dedication to the nation's ideals. July 1st saw the initial clash between Confederate and Union forces in the town of Gettysburg. The battle lines extended north and west of the town, setting the stage for more significant engagements. July 2nd brought intense fighting as both sides attempted to gain advantageous positions. The iconic struggle for Little Round Top and the wheat field showcased the determination and tenacity of soldiers on both sides. The climax of the battle came on July 3rd with Pickett's charge, a Confederate assault against the center of the Union lines on Cemetery Ridge. This ill-fated charge resulted in a catastrophic loss for the Confederates and marked a turning point in the battle. The Battle of Gettysburg highlighted the strategic brilliance and miscalculations of both Confederate and Union commanders. General Lee's decision to launch Pickett's charge was a gamble that failed, and it underscored the difficulties of conducting large-scale coordinated attacks across varying terrains. On the Union side, General Meade's defensive positions on Cemetery Ridge proved crucial in repelling Confederate assaults. The battlefield's topography played a significant role, with hills, ridges, and valleys influencing troop movements and battle strategies. The Battle of Gettysburg marked a turning point in the Civil War. The Union victory boosted Northern morale, discouraged foreign intervention on behalf of the Confederacy, and gave a new sense of purpose to the fight against slavery. The battle's impact extended beyond the war, influencing subsequent generations' understanding of American identity, freedom, and sacrifice. Beyond its historical significance, the battlefield is renowned for its haunting tales, which evoke a sense of mystery and reverence. Devil's Den is a rocky area that witnessed intense fighting during the battle, and its reputation for spectral sightings has endured. Visitors and park rangers have reported seeing apparitions of soldiers moving among the boulders, and some have even claimed to hear faint whispers and distant gunshots. Triangular Field, also known as Bloody Wheat Field, is an area that witnessed brutal combat, and its soil is said to be soaked with the blood of fallen soldiers. Eerie phenomena include ghostly soldiers marching in formation and vanishing into thin air, along with unsettling cries and moans that pierce the stillness. Sacks-covered bridge was used as a field hospital during the battle. This bridge is rumored to be haunted by the spirits of wounded soldiers. Visitors have reported hearing footsteps, groans of agony, and sometimes even the apparitions of medical personnel attending to invisible patients. The tragic tale of Jenny Wade, the only civilian killed during the battle, lingers in the atmosphere of her former residence. Some claim to have seen her apparition, while others have experienced inexplicable cold spots and the sensation of being watched. The Farnsworth House Inn was used as a Confederate sharpshooter's nest during the battle. This inn is said to house multiple spirits. Guests have reported encountering apparitions in period clothing, doors opening and closing on their own, and objects moving mysteriously. Skeptics attribute the reported hauntings to a combination of factors, including psychological suggestion, the power of suggestion from local legends, and the residual energy left behind by the traumatic events of the battle. Additionally, the historical significance of the battlefield and the collective emotional energy associated with the site could contribute to the heightened sense of the supernatural. The allure of the Gettysburg battlefield's ghostly tales has led to a thriving tourism industry in the region. Guided ghost tours, historical reenactments, and paranormal investigations attract visitors eager to experience the site's spectral mysteries. However, the National Park Service, entrusted with preserving the historical integrity of the battlefield, seeks to strike a balance between historical education and the sensationalism of ghost stories. The Gettysburg battlefield stands as a testament to the sacrifices made during one of the bloodiest battles in American history. Its historical significance is undeniably intertwined with tales of hauntings and spectral encounters that have captivated the imaginations of visitors for generations. Whether one believes in the supernatural or not, the stories of ghostly apparitions and lingering echoes of the past serve as a poignant reminder of the human cost of war and the enduring legacy of the Gettysburg battlefield. The story of the Whaley House may seem an innocent family history, but it's truthfully believed that it was destined to be haunted back even before it was built. The place it was built was the place of the town's most famous public executions, the hanging of Yankee thief Jim Robinson. Thomas Whaley was not daunted by this and purchased the land in 1855 and began building his family home. The house, which was the first brick building in California, was built in the Greek Revival architecture. Thomas, his wife Anna, and their 3 children moved in 1857 and opened a general store out of the house a few months later. Shortly after, the family was bombarded with sadness and despair. Their son Thomas, only 18 months old, died in the house of scarlet fever. A few months later, a fire raged and destroyed the general store. After that, Thomas chose to move his family to San Francisco. In 1868, the family, which was now Thomas, Anna, and 5 children, decided to move back to the house. Shortly after the family returned, the house was once again booming with activity. It soon became the headquarters for the county courthouse, the town's first theater troupe, a general store, and much more. However, in 1870, local merchants started relocating to the newly established new town, now known as the Gaslamp Quarter. They abandoned Old Town and left it eerily quiet. Thomas was not deterred and continued residing in his home. In 1871, While Thomas was away, Anna was held at gunpoint by a group of people in order to seize courthouse records from the home. Many people believed that this was the turning point of his home and family. Many years later, two of his daughters got married in the home. The younger, Violet, married George Bertolacci. However, the marriage was unbearable and they divorced, leaving Violet despondent. Deep in her depression, she decided that she couldn't abide by the shame, and she took her own life on August 18, 1885. Throughout the years, many descendants of the Whaley family lived and died in the house. These include Thomas, Anna, and four of their children, Lillian, Thomas, Violet, and Francis. During its history, the house went through many restorative phases. During these times, many workers and visitors started noticing strange and mysterious things, including sounds, aromas, sights, and encounters. The most well-known and first spirit was Yankee Jim Robinson, because he died right there where the house was built. Robinson made eerie noises, loud footsteps, and left disembodied footprints. These activities scared the family members continuously throughout their lives. Baby Thomas, the first of the family to die there, always stayed close. This was reported by many visitors to the home. The sounds of him crying, the sounds of tiny footsteps, and even giggling when no one was in sight. Other people have reported a young woman lingering on the second floor. She's believed to be Violet, still consumed by sorrow. She seems to stay close to the second story, which is where she spent much of her time after the divorce, before she took her own life. Reports state that areas in the house become cold and people feel her presence. Thomas, Anna, and many other spirits have been felt in the home, stairwells, and other parts of the property. Thomas has been seen dressed in his frock, coat, and top hat at the top of the stairs. Other reports state the smell of a French perfume, which was Anna's signature scent. Many signs that the Whaley house still belonged to the many spirits that reside there, including a mist, lights turning on and off, and crystals hanging from the ceiling, swinging on its own. Nobody has lived there since 1953, but the spirits are still there, waiting to welcome visitors. Staff and guests who've toured speak of many unusual encounters. Some seeing a figure looking out the upstairs window long after the house is closed for the day. Other people have seen curtains moving while the windows were sealed shut. People can hear the sounds of children running up and down the stairs without anyone being seen. Guests have experienced cold spots, heard footsteps, and saw shadows appear and disappear. Do you believe? Go find out and decide for yourself. The Myrtle Plantation is over 100 miles from New Orleans, but it may as well be the French Quarter with how many spirits roam here. It was built in 1796 on a Tunica Indian burial ground by one of the leaders of the famed Whiskey Rebellion, David Bradford. General Bradford was a lawyer and Deputy Attorney General for Washington County, which both Pennsylvania and Virginia both claimed. He became a major figure in the Whiskey Rebellion. The protest was one of the first tests of the newly formed federal government, and President Washington sent troops to arrest the leader. Bradford was one of them that they sought after. Knowing what was coming, he fled to the Spanish territory of Louisiana. There he built a home and plantation and called it Laurel Grove. He lived there alone for several years. President John Adams eventually pardoned him, and he sent for his family to move to the plantation with him. After his death in 1808, his wife Elizabeth took over the plantation. In 1817, she sold it to a close family friend that had married their daughter, Sarah Matilda Clark Woodruff. The Woodruffs had 3 kids, Africa Gale, James, and Mary Octavia. Tragedy struck the Woodruffs in 1823. Sarah Matilda, James, and Africa Gale all died from yellow fever. Rumors claimed that they were really poisoned by a young slave girl named Chloe. Being the last 2 survivors, Clark and Mary Octavia left and sold the plantation to Ruffin Gray Sterling in the 1830s. Shortly after, Sterling died and his wife took control. She renamed it Myrtle Plantation after the many crepe myrtles that grew in the area. The plantation is believed to be built on a burial ground of the Tunica native tribe. Some say that is why so much paranormal activity happens here. The spirit of a young indigenous woman has been spotted on the property. Although the records say that the 3 Woodruffs died of yellow fever, Rumors stated that they were poisoned by a slave named Chloe. Clark had taken a shine to Chloe and took to forcing himself on her. She had no choice, for if she refused, she would be flogged publicly. Wanting revenge, she listened to Clark and Sarah's business dealings in an attempt to hear something that she could use. One of them caught her eavesdropping through a keyhole and had one of her ears cut off as punishment. She started wearing a green turban to cover it up. She formed a plan and baked a cake for the family, boiling down toxic oleander leaves and added it to the cake. She wanted them to get sick so she could get back in good standing with them by nursing them back to health, though some claim she just wanted to kill them. Whether her plan backfired depends on her intentions. If her intention was their death, she succeeded. Sarah, James, and Africa died from eating the cake. The other slaves, not wanting to get in trouble for appearing to harbor Chloe, took her in the middle of the night, hung her, and tossed her into a nearby river. Some say that that story is fake, but many others swear by it. Her ghost has been seen there at night, often standing over the beds of sleeping guests. Many visitors to the plantation report seeing the ghost of a young black woman wearing a green turban in different areas. One photographer even took a photo of her while he was surveying for an insurance company. They swore that nobody was standing in that spot the day he took the picture. The spirits of the poisoned children have also been spotted there. Africa Gale appears in the room she died. Guests have also seen her from outside, staring out the upstairs window. Some say she has an uncanny resemblance to the young girl in a painting in the game room. William Drew Winter is an attorney that Mrs. Sterling hired to help the plantation's finances during the Civil War. Following the war, they found themselves flat broke. Their assets had been tied up in federal currency, which was worthless after the war. They were forced to sell the plantation, but was able to buy it back 2 years later. Winter was mysteriously shot dead there in 1871. Rumor is that a man named E.B. Weber was the one that pulled the trigger, although the reason Winter was targeted is unknown. He was shot on the front porch, but walked into the house wounded and attempted to climb the stairs. He died on the 17th step. His ghost is one of the most encountered spirits at the plantation. He has been heard stumbling up the stairs at night. Some are fooled into thinking that the sound is another guest, but those that investigate are startled to find nobody on the stairs. Some have seen a phantom trail of blood from the porch into the house, while others have seen his spirit crawling up the stairs, begging for help. The ghost of a young girl who died in 1867 also haunts the Myrtle plantation. Her cause of death is unknown, but a voodoo priestess tried saving her with magic rituals, but they failed. Her ghost has been spotted in the room where she died. Guests claim to have woke up to a young girl practicing voodoo on them while they slept. 3 Union soldiers attempted to loot the plantation during the Civil War. Shortly after starting, they were shot to death, supposedly by Confederate soldiers. Years later, a maid attempted to clean the bloodstains, but they wouldn't come off. Some claim that they've seen the bodies of the soldiers lying on the first floor in a pool of blood. The house that sits at 1140 Royal Street in New Orleans looks elegant and sophisticated, but it is one of torture and death. It is the LaLaurie Mansion, named for its mistress, Madame Marie Delphine LaLaurie. In that house, in the 1830s, Delphine LaLaurie viciously tortured the slaves she owned. She mutilated, tortured, and subjected them to sick experiments. When a fire eventually uncovered these atrocities, an unknown number had died at her hands. Although she fled, her evil remained. The house is reported to be one of the most haunted houses in New Orleans, forever cursed by the Madame's victims. The story begins in 1831. A man named Edward Dufessat sold his unfinished home to a well-off, pleasant-looking couple, Dr. Leonard Lewis LaLaurie and his wife, Delphine. The couple finished the mansion in the Federal architectural style. It sat on the corner of Royal and Hospital Streets in the French Quarter. It looked like a great addition to the neighborhood, but life inside could only be described as hellish. Inside the house, Madame LaLaurie had started abusing and torturing her slaves. She was kind to them when in public, even freeing 2 of them, but behind closed doors she was a nightmare. But it was nothing but a rumor until a fire broke out in 1834. The fire revealed all of her depravity. When volunteers first arrived, they encountered a black cook chained to the stove. The cook told them that she intentionally started the fire in an attempt to take her own life. As they ventured further, more was uncovered. Above the kitchen was an attic, where the first responders found a group of imprisoned slaves. Several had been viciously tortured, with bones broken, eyes gouged out, and worse. The next day, the New Orleans Bee reported, upon entering one of the apartments, the most appalling spectacle met their eyes. 7 slaves, more or less mutilated, were seen suspended by their neck, with their limbs apparently stretched and torn from one extremity to the other. They had been confined by her for several months, and had been merely kept in existence to prolong their suffering. Delphine fled, but the story of the Laurie mansion was just starting. After the fire, the house went on an uneasy and erratic journey. After sitting in ruins for years, it became an integrated school, a conservatory of music, and a home for the homeless. It was also once partitioned into apartments. It eventually fell into private hands. No one ever seemed to own the house for very long. One owner even ended up in an asylum. Another one fell into a coma. Even actor Nicolas Cage owned the house for a while, but lost it to foreclosure in 2009. He later said, "I bought it in 2007, figuring it would be a good place in which to write the great American horror novel. I didn't get far with the novel." Local lore states that there is a reason that no one has owned the house for very long. Even though Madame LaLaurie was long dead, it's said that her horrible crimes made the mansion deeply haunted. As the Laurie mansion went from owner to owner, several who went inside have had strange paranormal encounters. Some reports claim hearing tortured shrieks and moans. Others have smelled burning flesh or heard dragging chains. More claims are people seeing ghosts, including a black man in chains and a white woman with glaring eyes. Some of these ghosts, especially the woman whom is believed to be Madame LaLaurie herself, are violent. During its time as a school, young girls supposedly encountered a woman who would grab their arms, leaving bruises and scratches. Other spirits seem more friendly, even playful. One medium who visited suggested much of its evil had dissipated, leaving the other entities able to wander free without fear of their former mistress. Today, the house looks as charming as ever, but locals still know about its bloody history. It looks lovely from the sidewalk, but the house has a truly nightmarish history. The year was 1936, and the day was bright and sunny. The Queen Mary departed its port in England for its maiden voyage. She was packed with all the amenities: exquisite dining rooms, swimming pools, daily radio broadcasts, a dog kennel for passengers' dogs, a nursery, and even a hospital. With a top speed of 32 knots, she was a fast ship, being able to travel from England to New York in 4 days. The company that had her, the Cunard White Star Line, desperately needed some success. Cunard had gone broke during the Depression, and White Star Line was still reeling from the Titanic and Britannic. All the fates now rested on the Queen Mary, and it appeared that their luck had turned. The RMS Queen Mary was dominant in transatlantic travel, holding the blue ribbon from 1938 to 1952, welcoming celebrities, politicians, and royalty. But the world was in trouble. When World War II broke out, the Queen Mary became a military transport ship, hauling anywhere between 5,000 and 15,000 soldiers across the world, and that's when things turned dark. At least 47 people died aboard the Queen Mary during its time at sea. During an emergency drill, a young crew member named John Petter was crushed by a door. Another died after drinking gin, but was really just cleaning fluid. The rest died of natural causes. At least that's what the official records say. Hundreds of others are believed to have died on or at the hands of the Queen Mary before her retirement. The ship was put into military service in 1939. Britain believed she would be saved from German U-boats due to her size and speed, and they were right. Rumors say that the leader of Germany offered a $250,000 reward for any U-boat captain that could sink her. However, the efficiency came at a cost. She was pushed to the limit, quite often forcing 15,000 soldiers inside when it was designed for 2,200 passengers. In order to make more space, she was stripped of her beautiful decor and all her amenities. Her smokestacks were painted gray, and the portholes were welded shut and painted black. These changes caused the nickname the Gray Ghost. Soldiers slept shoulder to shoulder above deck during the summer and took turns sleeping in bunks below deck. The cabins were suffocatingly hot due to the lack of airflow. Some of the soldiers died from heat exhaustion, while others jumped ship. The Mary was no longer a luxury cruise ship. It had been turned into hell. Supposedly, the staff also went half crazy. One nasty rumor is that the galley crew locked the chef in his own oven and roasted him alive. There is no records of the chef's death, but plenty of evidence exists that the Mary was responsible for the deaths of more than 300 men. October of 1942 saw the ship accidentally collide with the HMS Curacao. It was a much smaller ship that was escorting her around the Irish coast. The Curacao was zigzagging in front of the Queen Mary, trying to throw off any potential missile attacks, when the 82,000-pound ship mistakenly plowed into it, breaking it in half. Some of the crew died instantly, while others drowned or died from hypothermia due to the freezing waters. The ship never stopped to rescue them, as doing so would have compromised the thousands of soldiers on board. As a result, 329 died. The truth of the event was sealed until the end of the war, 3 years later. By then, the ship had been renovated over a 10-month period, erasing all remnants of military life. Paintings, fine china, Art Deco furniture were returned to the ship, placed in the cabins and dining rooms. She was once again ready to dazzle the rich, famous, and powerful. However, all this decor couldn't bury what happened during the war. The Queen Mary was a haunted ship. The Queen Mary is supposedly haunted by over 100 spirits, the most infamous one being the spirit of stateroom B340. This is where the paranormal activity is so frequent and intense that some crew members refuse to go inside. Each person has their own story about who or what haunts the room. A third-class passenger named Walter J. Adamson mysteriously died there in 1948. Is this the ghost in there, or did the ghost kill him? Another theory says that the staff locked a man in his third-class room after he killed 2 women in the 1960s. That night, he started beating on the door, screaming that something was in the room with him. They opened the door the next morning, where they found his body ripped apart. In 1967, the ship was retired. 3 third-class rooms were combined for a larger hotel room, B340. Shortly after, guests reported odd things. One woman claimed the bed covers were ripped off her in the middle of the night, waking her up. Then she saw a man looming over the end of the bed. Other people said that they heard phantom voices and had faucets turn on by themselves. So many negative reports came in during the 1970s that they closed B340 to the public for more than 30 years. It was eventually reopened in 2018 as a haunted attraction, but it came with a fierce warning. The captain is even too scared to enter. Other areas that are reported haunted are the former first-class swimming pool, Boiler Room 4, and the doorway where John Petter was tragically killed. Petter's ghost is often seen wearing blue coveralls. Occasionally, he would run behind people, whistling as if to warn them. Other times, he would ask people if they've seen his wrench, but when they turned back, he'd be gone. Because of all the ghostly activity there, it earned the title Most Haunted Ship in the World, attracting many paranormal fanatics as well as history buffs. Even in the light of day, the Mary is creepy. It's a relic of a bygone era. By the 1960s, commercial flights had become the preferred method of travel, and the ocean liner industry had gone dry. The golden years were over. It was spectacular in the 1930s, but unable to compete with modern cruise ships. The Cunard Company eventually sold her to the city of Long Beach, serving as a tourist attraction and hotel. With few modern updates, she still looks like she did during her heyday, grand and glamorous. It is called the Ship of Woods due to the amount of mixed woods used during construction. Walking up its massive black hole, you may get the same feeling of excitement that passengers experienced the day it launched. On that morning in May, the Queen Mary was still innocent and hopeful. This ship now holds just as much evil as it does hope. Marred by war, time and renovation can't bury the dark secrets of the RMS Queen Mary. The St. Augustine Lighthouse has the distinction of being the first of its kind established in Florida by the new territorial American government. John Adams and his lot had just downright bought Florida out from Spanish grasp, and the general idea was to commence a reconstruction and remodeling project that would, in essence, make the locals warm up to their new overlords. The official lighthouse was constructed over an earlier watchtower built and operated by the Spaniards. The waters around Florida were a maze of commercial and seafaring trade routes. This not only attracted investors, but a lot of pirates and privateers. When Sir Francis Drake attacked St. Augustine, one of the first things the Spanish did after he sacked the colony was implement various beacons and watchtowers along the coast in order to prevent something like that ever happening again. One of these watchtowers was carved into the place the lighthouse now calls home. They were mostly made of coquina taken from a nearby quarry on the island. In 1871, the Americans came to a realization: the lighthouse was sinking. They did extensive remodelings and reconstructed the old dam. A man named Hezekiah H. Petit was assigned the task, and he oversaw most of the construction efforts. Hezekiah H. Petit had really restless children. By today's standards, they would no doubt be labeled as hyperactive. Anyway, Petit constantly brought his kids to work and let them play around the construction site. Big mistake. On July 10, 1873, the kids were playing on a cart, jumping and riding around in it. The cart toppled, with the kids inside, and crashed into the nearby coast. Back then, the surf reached the lighthouse. The two eldest Petit children, Eliza and Mary, drowned. There was a third African-American kid, but some newspaper reports failed to mention her. According to operators and the staff of the place, the playful ghost of these children still inhabits the lighthouse. Workers will often discover previously bolted doors from the night before hanging wide open the next day. They often tell tales of the racket of children's laughter in the middle of the night. Music boxes sold in the gift shop will mysteriously pop open and start playing all by themselves. Tour guides report increased incidences of being touched or seized by shades while showing visitors around. Meanwhile, visitors to the lighthouse describe catching flashes of a young girl dressed in old-era clothing gazing out from the lighthouse door or standing by the upstairs window. The ghost of this young lady is rather pleasant and rarely interacts with visitors. The same can't be said of less wholesome entities. There's a terrifying specter that haunts the lighthouse named the Man in Blue. When he appears, he makes life a living hell for the workers. One lighthouse keeper refused to go back to work because the Man in Blue harassed him for a whole night, chasing him up and down the 219 stairs of the lighthouse. Eventually, the lighthouse duty had to be handed over to the Coast Guard because of this wraith. Many think that the Man in Blue is the wandering spirit of lighthouse keeper Joseph Andrew. Andrew plummeted to his death while painting the original tower in 1859. Others, meanwhile, maintain the poltergeist is that of another lighthouse keeper. The man, heartbroken by his solitude, allegedly hanged himself in the tower and was only discovered the next night when the lighthouse failed to illuminate the coast. Visitors and staff describe the overwhelming smell of cigar smoke on the landing of the tower, despite the fact that smoking is prohibited on the grounds. At night, the current keeper constantly says he can hear boots coming up the stairs. Amidst a town gripped by fear of raging flames, the Iroquois Theater stood as a symbol of hope and safety. Constructed with the promise of being fireproof, it boasted an impressive asbestos theater curtain and numerous exits, providing reassurance to the survivors of the devastating Great Chicago Fire in 1903. However, tragedy struck just 5 weeks after its grand opening, reminiscent of the ill-fated Titanic's maiden voyage 9 years later. An overhead stage light ignited, engulfing the theater in flames. Shockingly, the supposed fire-resistant asbestos curtain failed to contain the inferno, raising doubts about its authenticity. To make matters worse, desperate theatergoers found themselves trapped inside as the doors, intended to keep unauthorized individuals out, became barriers to their escape. Over 600 individuals, often referred to as 605, perished in the flames that engulfed the theater during a matinee showing of Mr. Bluebeard, featuring Eddie Foy. Although the theater was capable of holding 1,600 people, the attendance was reportedly increased to 2,000 due to children being out of school for the holidays, and the backstage area was occupied by an extra 400 performers and staff. The weather was also bitterly cold. The 20s saw the destruction of the original building, only for it to rise from the ashes as the Oriental Theater, still preserving its magnificent facade. Today, This theater stands tall and proud at 24 West Randolph Street, captivating audience from near and far. However, it's not just the performances that draw attention to this place. Ghost hunters flock to this location, enticed by the haunted tales surrounding the alley behind the theater. Known as Death Alley, it earns its chilling name from a newspaper headline that dubbed it the Alley of Death and Mutilation. Legend has it that the spirits of ghouls roam these grounds, once thieves who shamelessly looted the deceased and assumed false identities to claim their valuables. According to David Cohen, an expert in Chicago hauntings and author of To Sleep with the Angels and Great Chicago Fires, the concentration of numerous deaths in a place that undoubtedly leaves a haunting impact on the site itself. Cohen, who is part of the Chicago Hauntings tour group, has personally visited the alley multiple times. He mentioned that while he goes about his business there, it is those who are unfamiliar with the location that may be more sensitive to the eerie presence that can be felt in that area. Ken Melvoin Berg, the co-owner of Weird Chicago Tours, confirmed that the site is indeed haunted. In fact, he mentioned that he and his tour groups have encountered more instances of activity there compared to almost any other location in the city. According to Melvoin Berg, not all of the places they discuss, which are rumored to be haunted, are actually believed to be so. However, this particular site is one that he genuinely believes to be haunted. He further explained that he has conducted thorough investigations both inside and outside of the theater, and there is undeniably some significant activity taking place. Melvoin Berg explained that when he refers to activity, he is specifically referring to photographic anomalies that include eerie ghost-like images captured in the alley and the presence of shadow people in the theater itself. In fact, he has personally witnessed what he believes to be an apparition wandering around the alleyway, as tangible as any living person. Anna Gasteyer, the talented actress and former cast member of Saturday Night Live, recently shared her intriguing experiences on the Biography Channel's Celebrity Ghost Stories. While portraying the iconic character Elphaba in the hit musical Wicked, Gasteyer revealed that she encountered spine-chilling moments in the theater. However, in a candid interview with the Onion's AV Club, she confessed, "I actually had a story that I decided to embellish for financial gain." In the realm of art, Chicago was graced by the magnificent sculptures of Taft, a true master of the Beaux art style. His remarkable creations, such as the awe-inspiring Fountain of the Great Lakes displayed outside the Art Institute, and the captivating Fountain of Time located on the University of Chicago Midway, showcased his immense talent. The Union League Club recognized Taft's brilliance and commissioned him to create a memorial sculpture. As a result, his exquisite bas-relief tablet found its initial place of honor at the Iroquois Memorial Hospital. Now imagine stumbling upon a lost artifact, forgotten in the depths of City Hall's basement. This mysterious item, once lost after the closure of the hospital, has now found its place above the revolving doors in the northwest corner of the City Hall lobby. It remains unseen and unnoticed by most, except for those who actively seek it out. While the artifact may go unnoticed by many, there is a dedicated Facebook group that delves into the stories of victims and survivors, along with other chilling details. It serves as a platform to share the haunting tales associated with this hidden gem. Interestingly, the ghosts that inhabit this place seem to defy the constraints of time. They do not adhere to any specific calendar dates or anniversaries. This lack of predictability may not be ideal for business, but it adds to the enigmatic allure of these spirits. If you're intrigued by the unknown and have a penchant for uncovering hidden treasures, City Hall's hidden artifact awaits your discovery. Embark on a journey to unravel its secrets and become part of a captivating narrative that transcends time itself. Nelson Algren masterfully captured the harrowing experience of being trapped in a blazing theater in his renowned 1939 poem, Program for Appeasement. The poem vividly portrays the disintegration of safety norms as panic spreads, urging individuals to abandon all conventions and prioritize their own survival. Algren's powerful words resonate. Instead of running, take a leap, for yourself alone. Descend from the balcony, using someone's head as support. Seize 2 flaming seat cushions and forge your path to freedom. Towards the farthest exit, concealed in the darkest corner. Overlooked by all the others, but never turn your gaze backward. Never, ever look back. Standing tall in the heart of downtown, This historic hotel has long been a popular spot for visitors of Flagstaff, whether they are looking for luxury, nightlife, or a tangled past that takes more than a night's stay to unravel. Whatever your poison, the Hotel Monte Vista is here for you, and this glimpse into the great American West comes filled with lore, antiquity, and a few enduring spirits that have been with the hotel so long that they have become part of its mystique. From murdered sex workers and the ghosts of Bellboys Pass to bootleg tunnels and Prohibition-era cocktail lounges, there is no shortage of mysteries to explore when it comes to one of the City of Seven Wonders' most notorious haunts. It's safe to say that when it comes to haunted history, Flagstaff has a corner on the market. But among the many stories that circulate in and around this charming mountain town, few can hold a candle to those that have come out of the famed Monte Vista Hotel. Though only in operation for a century, this touchstone of the American West has racked up enough strange and unusual history to make a full investigation into its long list of paranormal activity a tremendous undertaking. Now, the Monte Vista balances many reputations, maintaining its place as one of Flagstaff's most popular hotels and most compelling attractions. But to locals, it will always be known for one thing and one thing only: its resident ghosts. Of the many rooms in this historic hotel, where the spirits of the past like to make their presence known, few have had the lasting effect of Room 220, where an unusual one-time resident known as the Meat Man is still causing a stir to this day. This long-term boarder, who spent his days at the Monte Vista back in the early 1980s, had a somewhat unusual habit, hanging raw meat from his chandelier. Why he did this, no one was really certain, but needless to say, it earned him a reputation among his neighbors. What really makes the Meat Man stand out in the Monte Vista's history, though, is not what eccentricities he had in life, but the unusual activities he's still getting up to today, nearly 40 years after he was found dead in his room. On one such occasion, not long after the Meat Man had met his fate, a maintenance worker for the hotel was up in room 220 making a few repairs. When he left, he turned off the lights and locked the door, but when he returned shortly after, he found that chaos had erupted in his absence. The television was not only on, but playing at full volume, and, even more distressing, the linens on the bed had been violently removed, ripped up, and scattered across the room, as if in a fit of anger. Needless to say, the maintenance worker steered clear of room 220 from then on, but even today, guests in the room have reported the television acting on its own accord, though it has long been replaced, as well as the cold touch of a man's hands, like raw meat. Room 305 has also had its share of reported activity, some of it going back many decades. It has even been featured on shows that document the paranormal, and has become a popular room to book for lovers of the strange and unusual. The most common report, which has been well documented, is of an elderly woman in the rocking chair by the window. Guests have long told the tale of the chair moving by itself, knocking against the closet, and some have even seen the old woman herself gazing longingly out the window. While the woman's name is not known, old stories from the hotel tell of a long-term resident, an old woman, who would sit by the window day in and day out, looking out into the world, perhaps waiting patiently for someone to return. It would seem that she still is. In 1970, it is reported that 3 men robbed a bank in a nearby town, a daring heist that left one of the 3 shot and wounded after a bank guard surprised them from behind and started firing. The 3 men managed to escape, returning to the cocktail lounge at the Monte Vista to celebrate their big score. Only the wounded man among them was more wounded than they had realized, and after a few drinks, he soon bled to death at the bar. Since that day, patrons and staff alike have noticed unusual activity in the hotel bar, including a disembodied voice saying "good morning" upon their arrival, and reports of bar stools and drinks that seem to move on their own. While many of the deaths at the Monte Vista were of natural causes, this downtown hotel has also seen its share of nefarious crimes, even murders. In fact, many years ago in the early 20th century, Flagstaff's notorious red light district could be found only a few blocks away. It was there in the early 1940s that 2 female sex workers were working their shift, only to be picked up by a man who was staying in room 306 of the Monte Vista Hotel and looking for some company for the night. The 2 women returned to his room, unexpecting of the horrors that awaited them, and at some point during their visit were brutally murdered and dumped out of the 3rd-floor window to the street below. What happened to these women was horrendous, and it seems they agree, their spirits still haunting the room in which their murders were committed, lashing out at anyone who dare stay there. In the decades since, guests have reported the uneasy feeling of being watched, as well as difficulty sleeping, Men in particular tend to be affected, with some claiming that ghostly hands have been placed over their mouths or throats while they sleep. A comprehensive list of the hauntings at the Monte Vista Hotel would be long indeed. But there are a few other notable spirits who have spent many years trying to gain the attention of those who frequent this historic establishment. Among them is a man called the Phantom Bellboy, who is known to knock on doors in the late hours of the night announcing, in a muffled voice, room service. Some have seen the apparition standing outside of room 210, and it is even claimed that the actor John Wayne had a close encounter with him during his stay. In the basement, the sounds of an infant crying have often been heard. There is little explanation as to how this phantom child met their end, but any staff member unfortunate enough to hear the cries has been known to run the other way as quick as they can. Lastly, there are the ghosts of the dancing couple, a pair of ghostly lovers who are seen in the early hours of the morning dancing away in the hotel's cocktail lounge. They are dressed in their formal best and are always smiling and laughing. Between them all, there is no shortage of ghostly encounters at the Monte Vista Hotel, making it by far one of the most haunted establishments still standing in the American Old West. Thank you for making it all the way through this video. If you like this video, hit that like and subscribe button and comment down below. And until next time.